Hi. Six Snipes here, back not only this week, but to Sandstorm. After a brief hiatus in the world of Battlefield, I confess I've been more than curious to see how the game has improved after this past month or so.
I guess you wonder where I've been.
I've made a resolution to see to it that a new Insurgency video comes out at the beginning of every week, this one being no exception. There's a lot of different ideas to cover that aren't just obligatory gun guides, so we're going to swing into a topic I've barely talked about and never shown in terms of gameplay. Today, I'm going to take a look at the world of Insurgency Sandstorm's player versus AI. I've resolved to make a title, so you're all watching This Week in Sandstorm.
Missed me.
I wanted to start a discussion regarding the admittedly addicting co-op mode of Insurgency, only I have to confess that given my recent record of speaking pretty negatively on some of the content of this game, I was genuinely and pleasantly surprised that having played through multiple modes in this field, I was way too impressed to do the same here.
I'm so damn confused.
Despite how I feel now, if you know anything about Insurgency Sandstorm, you're probably aware that it's had more than a shaky reputation of the way it manages its PvE scene in the past. To best explain it to people who didn't play back then, and by back then I mean 4 months ago, Insurgency AI were the most aggressive, lethal, and imposing threat to any shooter title, but they were also pretty stupid. Basically, every time an enemy came around a corner within about 20 feet of you, the game flipped the coin. Either the bot gets gunned down out of complete ineptitude, poor aim, and laughable lack of situational awareness, or he would pull out the most insane MLG flick on your ass and send you to the Shadow Realm before you can even say, oh shit, he's using a Mosin. Not to mention the incredible wall bangs leading to people proving bots were capable of seeing through walls even after the developers said they couldn't, as well as the classic miracle Molotov, wherein an insurgent would throw the spicy bottle of death straight up and it lands on your completely isolated soldier alone in cover 50 meters away with the accuracy of a guided missile, and this was every single game. So you can imagine when night mode came around, it only perpetuated the problem. You would get randomly headshotted from a machine gunner firing from a standing position literally 80 meters away in pitch black. AI were incredibly and uncannily aware of your every position and move despite the lighting and their lack of visual support, or else entirely oblivious to you in some of the most hilarious scenarios, but there was no in between.
Man, these guys are elusive.
And it was so inconsistent and tilted by the scales that eventually there was a short period where people just gave up. Not to mention, shortly after the heyday of all the aforementioned BS, NWI in a stroke of genius decided the best way to fix their co-op and please half their audience was to just take away half the arsenal of the security team.
What? What the fuck?
That's right, the only team anyone voted for to begin with, just because of their access to the Insurgents' arsenal as well as their own, got nerfed by removing the Insurgents' arsenal. Like who's going to complain about that being OP? The bots? Throw in Operation Breakaways, AI update / overhaul that supposedly balanced these issues, but more or less didn't entirely fix half the problems and introduced just as many, so at this point in the video you can probably see why more than a few members of the co-op community were neither pleased or under the impression that the developers were even slightly attentive to their feedback.
That sign can't stop me because I can't read!
And with that brief history lesson in mind, you can probably also surmise that given all this experience prior to this video, I wasn't overly hyped to run a couple games, much less looking to say anything positive about the cooperative modes. But lo and behold, me and my dad not only had a blast, but encountered minimal issues or general shenanigans going on with the AI as of late in Operation Cold Blood. And personally, I can't help but have the impression that despite all the problems, NWI has actually been putting effort into fixing some of these issues. So let me dive into a comprehensive review of the co-op scene and what's wrong and what's fixed in February 2021. The AI themselves are still very dangerous, yet odd in many ways. Erratic even. Wild cards, if you will. Weird, if you must. The classes can carry different guns or even different gadgets, and depending on that type, they can either be cannon fodder or screw you over very quickly and very easily. This is not what you'd call a forgiving system. You have an opportunity to shoot these guys. They don't get that random flick or wallbang on people nearly as much anymore. But that given opportunity to shoot an enemy, if you miss or are stuck in a reload or even don't see them, there's a very good chance you're gonna get killed. Same for running into an exposed space. Not a good idea. This mode does a very good, effective job of encouraging basic to advanced strategies. Slice your pies, move in numbers, coordinate coverage, shoot from cover, and ultimately find high ground.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate my power!
Do these things and more, you have a very solid shot at blowing up a weapons cache within 3 seconds of capping the last zone, or else pulling off a flawless defense alongside your team. Fail to do so, and they will burn you. It's a challenge and in many ways fair, but all of this being said, there's several key issues I take with the behavior of these mobs and will make it a nice round 2. Firstly, the AI are not logical, nor do they behave like rational human beings. Now in real life, incels and jihadis may not be the brightest bulbs in the box, then again you wouldn't be if you chose to fight this, but even the least equipped resistant groups tend to stick to a simple but very effective strategy. Under-equipped and outmatched in training, enemies frequently strike hard and fast in real life, orchestrating ambushes and bold assaults. This is classical guerrilla warfare, not that kind of guerrilla. More or less, the AI don't behave like this. The AI don't coordinate, they don't strategize, the AI do not have a plan. The only thing effective about their entire method is the fact that they generally just outmatch you and smother you with an OP4 roughly the size of Connecticut, but that just means all the more targets for the A tend to spread across the entire map. They do actions more than just move and shoot. You do see them utilize utility items like flashbangs and smoke grenades, but to very little effect. Why? Because they do so incorrectly. We did this push game where every wave of theirs deployed a smoke screen off the bat, but instead of that smoke obscuring our sight of the immediate area around the objective, leaving us open to be charged, they just threw canisters down on their spawn zone. Their usage was illogical and ultimately inhibiting them from returning fire and covering advancing forces. If they recognized lines of sight or when they were being fired upon, or enemy crossfire, or even deployed smoke in designated areas as to impede player overwatch, they would be a viable threat and come across as way more clever and coordinated. I've seen better enemies in LEGO Star Wars. More confusing is the way in which they move. Their strategies include walk towards the objective, or else attempt to go around and flank 10% of the time, but the more enemies you have, this ends up generally resulting in them getting mowed down or else bodied by the RPG their scrubs dropped the last round.
Why you bully me?
Every push into an objective looks like a stray dude running in, or else 3 and 4 people jamming into a door all at once without checking angles or covering lines of sight. It's not intimidating when the terrorists do a Congo line towards the objective and just let you get crazy collaterals for days, not to mention classes don't really understand their role. So you see marksmen clearing rooms with their sniper rifles instead of sitting back and attempting to single out targets and pick off hostiles. Ultimately, if they simply just spread out and utilize their assets more intelligently, they could really prove to be more dangerous. If gunners attempted to populate towards the back of the wave and suppress enemy positions, or breachers coordinated with their team to push after flashing the objective, they'd probably end up being taken a lot more seriously. But they don't, so they generally just are treated as a joke.
Oh wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
Secondly, while strategically bad on an individual basis, bots can be a little too good, and by that I mean they've never really been at a point where they haven't been able to kill you with the occasional power of BS. Be it completely aware of your existence through objects, or else able to see through rather thick smokes. Sometimes you just get killed when you shouldn't have. Recent changes have made it better. In fact, while I expected it to happen and even baited it for several instances, I was only ever really fired upon through smoke once, and another through some thinner pipes. But don't get me wrong, having your Azrael end card taken away because of some stupid death is never fun, where it really only takes one completely uncalled for loss to make you feel cheated. Finally, it's also worth mentioning the one-hit melee, something which you can't do to them or other players, but if you get too close to any bot, they can just weapon bash your ass to the floor instantly, which means rounding a corner and running into even the most basic enemy can just be a guaranteed death, which is so dumb, because if you're going on about realism, you can't tell me the muzzle brake of a gun does more than the bullets, but I digress. Of course, the behavior of the AI are supplemented by the modes, of which there are also 2. The one we started in, and best of all of them, is Outpost. Introduced relatively recently as of Breakaway, this mode changed up the bland formula of push this objective and follow up this cache, with instead being the anvil under the hammer of a massive attack force. Failure against a wave means losing ground and respawning in less and less ideal areas of defense until you're completely out of options, and to be perfectly honest, it's amazing. But for all its perks, there's a couple key issues. The incompetency of AI is most obvious here the more you realize how bad they are at attacking anything. Masses of bodies just run towards where their friends just got shot not 2 seconds ago, and it feels like a lot more of a horde mode, which isn't bad at all, but if they're going to act this much like brainless zombies, you might as well make them look like it. Please bring back zombie mode. Further is the stonks of equipment points. While starting out with a pathetic number worth maybe a base primary and working your way up to better gear is fun, it makes night mode impossible because you're either scraping by with an M16 with no vision or being able to see with nods and not shooting at all because with a garbage-free handgun there's not much you can do. First world armed forces, particularly the US, are infamous for owning the night because the terrorists don't get night vision and we do. So either use the very simple solution of giving us even one more credit off the start of night ops or just have actually effective lighting on our defense objectives, even spotlights. On that subject, even being able to utilize or purchase emplacements such as spotlights to blind or else mounted MGs would be incredible. I have seen usable turret emplacements in the game and would like them on every objective because it would be very fun. While you're at it, give the enemy a technical because it'd be more of a challenge and let the demo man do more than aimlessly send rockets towards spawn points.
Now you fucked up!
More basic niceties would be able to pick up gear after resupplying your own. They're just sitting there and we killed them after all. It seems like every round makes you choose between picking up and saving something powerful like an RPG for the next game or else getting more ammo for your own gun and even healing, and I say, why not both? It's also worth noting that there should be better indication that the enemy is stealing the objective. I had several games where the 5 or so teammates on the roof didn't realize nobody was left defending the point on the ground floor, and as a result, a whole team just ended up throwing and giving the enemy a free capture. This is stupid, especially for the new players. We sat shouting out in the dead chat for 5+ minutes as they tried to figure out why they weren't triggering the next wave despite having killed all the enemies.
Yeah, we just lost that point. Literally all the enemies are dead, but there's still... I mean, these guys are new to the game, so... Here. Oh! He's almost there! He's on the point! He's on the point!
Yeah.
I have less beef with the checkpoint or else push but with bots mode, only that while intuitive and very accessible, unlike Outpost, it's not exactly pushing the boundaries of game design. It's not innovative, it's not new, or particularly exciting. Not to mention that that's the 2 modes. There's a hardcore version of checkpoint, but it's not fun, and there's always some gimmicky rotating one that people play for like 2 minutes and then sort of drop, usually because it's just checkpoint but with something dumb that's different. Ultimately, my impression of the PvE scene is that it's very fun. It always has been to a degree, and to be perfectly honest, I'll give NWI credit for polishing it in a lot of ways. However, with some very simple implementations and making some more tweaks to the AI's MO, we could really see a much more engaging co-op that everyone can appreciate as a staple of the game. Attack maneuvers, strategy, overall less ridiculousness with the artificial intelligence, and more intelligence. I'd rather personally like to see a never-ending outpost mode, but that's just me. I voiced a lot of opinions about this game that are controversial, but I wouldn't venture to say this is exactly an uncommon position to have. I'd like to see the next major update really focus on implementing a far better experience in PvE and making the game more fantastic as a whole. If you find anything about what I had to say agreeable, feel free to leave a like and maybe upvote this on the Reddit so NWI can see it for themselves. If you disagree or just think I'm an idiot, which is perfectly fair, go ahead and start a discussion down below. At this point, I'd say some more Insurgency content is safely in the works for this week, but until next time, I'm 6Snipes, and this has been your week in Sandstorm.